Today we're going to talk about graphing and writing inequalities. An inequality is a statement that two quantities are not equal, and they use one of the following symbols, a less than symbol. Now, what I've got written next to it is open dot. This is what happens, this is what we use when we graph, okay? And you'll see that in just a minute. So anything that's got a less than symbol when we graph, we use an open dot. You'll see what we mean. A greater than symbol points to the right. We also use an open dot there. Less than or equal to is an arrow pointing to the left with a line underneath it. It's a closed dot when we graph. And a greater than or equal to is a sign, is an arrow with an arrow pointing to the right with a line underneath it, and it also has a closed dot. So let's say we graph the following. We want to graph all real numbers less than 5. So I'm just going to make a line here. And I'm going to put arrows on both ends to indicate it goes on and on forever. And here's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll just put a couple more numbers. You don't have to write in every number. But if I want to graph all real numbers less than 5, I am going to put an open dot on 5 because it's a less than, and then an arrow going to the left. Same direction as the arrow here, because arrows to the left of 5 on the number line, or I'm sorry, numbers to the left of 5 on the number line are less than 5. So the open dot means that it's all numbers less than 5, but not including the 5. Okay, so let's take a look at this next one. X greater than -1. I'm just going to put a few numbers here. Here's 0, here's -1, here's -2. You don't have to write them all in. Okay, x greater than -1, we put an open dot on -1. The arrow goes to the right. So all values greater than -1, but not including -1. X less than or equal to 1/4. Okay, I'm going to put 1/4 here. I'm going to put 1/2 here. I'm going to put 0 below it. Okay, now if it's a less than or equal to, we put a closed dot. So I'm coloring it in on the 1/4, and the arrow goes to the left. So that means all numbers less than 1/4, but also numbers equal to 1/4. It includes 1/4. X greater than or equal to 0. Here's 0, 1, -1. Closed dot on 0, and an arrow going to the right. Okay. Now, we want to describe the solutions of x minus 6 is greater than or equal to 4 in words. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to just solve this just like we would an equation. Just imagine this was an equal sign. We're going to add 6 to each side, so we get x is greater than or equal to 10. And so that's what we're going to write. We're going to write all real numbers greater than or equal to 10. All right? Okay, moving on. Next page. We want to graph each inequality. So we're going to keep going with this. M is greater than or equal to 3/4, so I'll put 3/4 here. And 4/4, which would be 1 whole. And 1/2 would, 2/4 or 1/2 would be just below it. So we put a closed dot on 3 and an arrow going to the right. Next, now this looks like something we're going to have to actually solve. So t is less than 5 times, in parentheses, -1 plus 3. Well, let's do what's inside first. -1 plus 3 is 2, so I get 5 times 2. So in other words, t is less than 10. So here's 10 on the number line, 11, and 9. Well, put an open dot on 10 with an arrow going to the left. Now on these problems, we want to write the inequalities shown by each graph. Well, we have an arrow going to the right, so we know we're going to have an arrow going to the right in our answer, in our inequality. Let's use x on the left-hand side. And we have an open dot on -1, so we aren't going to put a line underneath it. We're just going to write x is greater than -1. Next one. The arrow is moving toward the left, but we have a closed dot, so we'll put a line underneath it, put the x on the left. You can use any variable you want. I'm just using x here. And x is less than or equal to 2. That's where the dot is. Next, Ray's dad told him not to turn on the air conditioner unless the temperature is at least 85 degrees Fahrenheit. Define a variable and write an inequality for the temperatures at which Ray can turn on the air conditioner. Graph the solutions. Okay, so the temperature, let's use T for temperature, has to be at least 85 degrees Fahrenheit. So that means it can also be equal to 85. So we're going to say T is greater than or equal to 85 degrees. Now if we want to graph that, we'll put 85. Up here, say I'll put 90. Down below, say 80. Well, since it's a greater than or equal to, we're going to put a closed dot on 85, and then with an arrow going to the right. That is it for today. Thank you very much for joining me.